and we'll get going. All right, folks. So we have two incredible people on stage right now. I'm going to do my best to introduce them, and then we're going to talk about adoption of AI. And I don't think there are any better people to talk about this topic than the two of them. So I'm Pranav. You don't need to know anything about me, but you do need to know about Carilu, who was previously the CMO at Atlassian, all the way to the IPO, and then has been an executive coach for other CMOs over the last 6 years, 7 years. And we have Maria, who used to be the CMO at ActiveCampaign and Anaplan, and is now an executive in residence at Scale Venture Partners. What did I miss?
Yeah, we're really happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
All right. Awesome. Okay, so my first question, right? Everyone talks about AI. Obviously, we're at an AI conference. Great. What was the last use, personally or at work, that you had with AI?
I asked questions 15 minutes ago about different companies and their scale. So again, I'm an advisor to CEOs and CMOs of growth companies, usually above 50 million, up to $1 billion and more. So I got a hill where we met each other originally, Sprout Social, 1Password, Ways and Biases, a number of companies in the B2B space. And so I'm really excited to talk about some of the deployment parts, but then also I think earlier this year I did a survey among CMOs about how often they were using AI tools personally, maybe monthly, weekly, once a day, and I've been laughing because I think there's a new survey that's how many times a day are you using it?
Okay, what was the question that you asked the AI 15 minutes ago? Do you remember?
I actually ask it all the time, fundraising questions about vendors, so you can figure out how big they are. I think, as many of you guys are experiencing, we're in this renaissance period of AI companies. There's just so many amazing ideas, so many amazing companies, that there's almost this fatigue as a buyer trying to sort through all the companies and understand how big are they, who are their competitors, what's the landscape, because we're really entering this era where I think we're going to see a massive change in the market between established vendors and new consolidation in the next, hopefully 3 to 5 years, or maybe there'll just still be millions of smaller companies instead of a consolidation.
I echo that opinion. So I'm going to switch to Maria. Your personal experience with AI?
I think one, you can tell Carilu and myself have been marketers for a long time. We answer the questions the way that we want, which is what the marketing stage to do. I'll get to that. I'm excited to be here. It's so exciting right now because, again, I'm dating myself. I remember the energy. I guess I would say ActiveCampaign and offering kind of in public, and I was registered for that. But part of that, I wasn't Marketo. It was the time when Marketo wasn't working, digital marketing wasn't working. There was this energy about what we were doing, and I feel so grateful to be part of this energy. I'm just happy to be here with everybody, and I have to start with that. As it comes with AI, I have this unique job now where I help all AI companies with scale ventures, so that's all in AI, and helping them with their marketing. So Stephen close a quick list. Yesterday we had a conference and I had to show everybody my digital phone, and everybody got to ask questions about what room should I be in or what's happening in this conference. What would look like me, and they were talking to me, but it was not me. And so that is just amazing. I have formally, I think one way that I help my own AI adoption is on my computer. I have changed my default search engine to be ChatGPT. And it's painful at first, right? Like it is, you just want to get to the thing you know how to get to the way you know it, but I think it's doing things like that and just really immersing yourself and then following the energy and not resisting it.
I will have to say my husband called me out and looked at my ChatGPT history and told me I shouldn't make medicine choices about my children from ChatGPT because it hallucinates. And then I had to say, in marriage counselor style, thank you for the feedback. I will definitely check the sources and be more careful in the future.
I think there's a point, right? That's how you learn to check the sources. That's how when it's for our jobs. I mean, as seriously as our jobs are, it's not medicine, it's not our families. And so you better bet if I'm taking medical advice, I'm looking of those sources is a better way to build rigor that then ends up, I know the topic is the enterprise, it then ends up impacting the work we're doing at the enterprise.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a massive challenge in the enterprise for AI about the data, because of course bad data in, bad data out. So lots of people doing deployments are still working really hard. And it's kind of ironic, right? Because a long time ago I used to work for Oracle, so data was so important in data warehouses. And before that I worked in process automation, which is right now everything old is new again. And the biggest problem with process automation products was actually getting your data right so that you could automate the products. So I think data about validity and trustworthiness is essential.
Okay, so thank you for that candid answer. No, that was great. So I want to pivot a little bit, and you all see enterprise businesses, you all see at-scale businesses all the time. Is there a story that comes to mind about the most successful AI deployment that you have seen that you can talk about publicly? Is there a story like that, or even just the early stages of a deployment?
Yeah, I'm going to go to the opposite. I'm going to go where I think it's going wrong, and it is changing so fast. I remember, I'm old, and I'm always trying to counter that with making sure the people that I hear them, and I'm not just being bold for bold's sake, but probably a regrettable interaction that I had about a year saying, when you're at an enterprise, like, I'll ask my candidates if they use ChatGPT or whatever LLM to do the exercise that they have, maybe give some tasks. If they say yes, I'm not considering that because I don't feel like they can do their own work. And I was like, that is so smart. Can you forward me all the names of the people that you are going to hire because of that? Those are the people that I want to hire. And so I think there's some, in the enterprise, some slower thinking. And I think it's important for everybody to be aware of that because that creates advantage for everybody in the room. I also think in the enterprise, you have to be thinking about solution, and with that we can talk about some good rollouts, but if you're not, I think it is very true that if you're not giving people a way to use the most modern tools, they're finding a way to use them around you, and then you're putting your own data at risk. So being short-sighted here is not going to help you long term. And so really trying to share a roadmap, even if you're not there, it just has to be that way, or you're going to end up losing data, having other issues that you would want anyway.
Great. So I'll share a couple of stories. I started a CMO AI group for at-scale CMOs. It's mostly VC-backed CMOs at companies of over 100 million to a couple billion. And we talk about case studies of what's working. We're sharing examples of vendors that we're using in experimentation. And I think that the AI at scale, and let me preface this by saying, I actually think bigger companies are not running faster than AI. I literally, Marie and I are personal friends as well as colleagues, and I called her last week and I said, Pat, we got off this AI club that I run, and I said, man, these people are all laggards. Like, I gotta go back into smaller companies because that's where the innovation is happening. And our vendors right now know more than anyone in the office. Because in the office, we have so much to do that we can kind of experiment with a vendor, we can get something into production, but these vendors are living and breathing, so immersed in AI, that I find that my AI vendor friends, who don't want to be called vendors, are really bringing more innovation to me than any of these established, innovative CMOs that I really have looked up to and respected and collaborated with. So I actually think that my group of at-scale CMOs are not the most innovative at doing AI. But I'll tell you that there's 3 areas where they're seeing real ROI and are investing. And the first, of course, is content. And that's not surprising. Content can be massively accelerated, it can be massively optimized. The web pages can do things in SEO that we dreamed of. You know, the research and product marketing that we can do to establish analysis of target markets and of specific sales folks. So I think really a lot in content, although that's sometimes ROI around, especially when our SEO is dropping as we're getting better at AI SEO content creation. So content creation. The second is really SDRs and BDRs. So we're seeing, we've always had this group of people who are not that experienced calling our customers to try to engage them. And there's a number of tools there, the agent tools, some outbound dialing tools. Like, there's so much innovation in that space, and we're not seeing it replace SDRs, but we're definitely seeing it double and triple and quadruple their productivity. So I've seen several CMOs who are getting 3 or 4 times as many meetings by adding tools into their SDR flow. And then the third area is data. And this is where I think people who have been in technology for a long time or in AI for a long time kind of roll their eyes, because we've been doing ML for years, possibly decades, right? That is still AI, but it's not the cool, hip, generative AI that came out just last year when AI just came out, right? I mean, I've been laughing because I wrote a white paper in 2005 about service-oriented architectures and business process management optimization using proper holistic models. Everything we've dreamed of is coming to life now. But what I would say is, for marketers, we're able to get better data than ever before, to do better targeting than ever before, to augment that data with private data, and just do so much personalization that it's, one of the companies I work with has mapped their entire universe of buyers, because they have a very specific product. They know everyone, every company, every buyer, and their spend is so effective that this last category of data for AI is the highest ROI.
All right, I gotta put an exclamation point on the last one, because that's how I describe us, but this is not about me. So
Please answer it. I'd actually love you to answer it, because I was just in this company's office. It's a public company, and we just started talking about your software, and I actually proposed your name and company as someone that they should talk to. So why don't you give them a quick overview?
Thank you, my job is done, I can retire now. No. Okay, no, I think you're 100% right. We see this even today. I was talking to a customer earlier today. Okay, Paramark, we help large B2B and B2C companies figure out where to invest their next dollar with confidence. So should you put money sponsoring this event, like we did, or should you put money on a TV ad, or should you put money in Google search or SDRs, or we use machine learning, the old school AI, to figure out the answer to that question. So I was talking to this company, and this is a hot startup, at scale, growing really fast, global company. And the first part of our entire deployment is getting their data organized. It's just hard work, down to daily spend and impressions by geography, by channel. And guess what? They don't have it. So we have to help them do it, and part of the reason why we won the deal was that. Because if you don't have the data, you can apply all the AI, but it's not going to go anywhere. It's garbage in, garbage out. So it's a great point about how I think AI companies can take on that initial hard work for getting the data organized before you get into the deployment phase. And I see a lot of companies do that.
And I think that's what's changed. So I was advising an AI company 5 years ago, and their biggest problem was that they'd sell a big deal, and it would take 6 to 8 months for the company to organize their data and tag it appropriately, and then be able to, then they could install the AI and get value in 1 week, but it was 1 week and 7 months and I think that the newest innovations in AI are making that data step much faster. So I think that's propels the opportunity to get more immediate value.
I completely agree. There are still ad platforms that will not give you clean data broken out by geography and day. We found that out today.
But just a comment to this, that I think, so you talked about those 3 places. I think there's 2 others that the CMOs are talking about that are becoming pervasive within our teams, which are 1, kind of those design use cases, both for brainstorming, but also for the images we're using in ads. And then 2, kind of all the win-loss analysis, kind of customer communications, and so that's becoming really pervasive.
Basically, every single step of marketing. Top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, product marketing, demand generation. I mean, I was gonna not do this, but I feel does anyone here like Hamilton?
Yes.
Look around, and how lucky we are to be alive right now. I literally sing this in the morning, because I try to remind myself when I wake up and I have oh my God, everything is going to be obsolete. The world is changing. And then I sing, look around, at night, I'm like sending prompts to my friends, I'm interviewing people. It's like everything that we knew is becoming easier and faster, but it's all going to be overhauled and transformed. And I think we're going to have a whole new tech stack of vendors. I feel like hopefully Salesforce does a great job with Agentforce, but we know how many years it took Einstein to actually work. And hopefully, Sixth Sense and Demandbase continue to do great ABM, but I think it's really hard for non-native AI vendors to re-architect. And if you're old enough to have gone through the mobile transformation or the cloud transformation or the change to agile development methodologies from waterfall, you'll know how long it takes established vendors to catch up on new technology. So I just think it's the most exciting time to be a founder. It's the most exciting time to be learning about buying AI tools because the whole landscape is changing.
Okay, so I want to, in that spirit of looking ahead and thinking about sort of what the future might hold, we talked about some of the challenges that we have right now in terms of adoption, data garbage in, garbage out, all that fun stuff. Like enterprise companies are not as fast as we would have predicted in terms of adopting it. Let's fast forward 5 years. If somebody's raised $20 million and they're going at it from a VC, backed perspective, what should they be marching towards in that 5-year sort of, time frame?
One of the challenges is all the use cases that Carilu talked about, that number one, that content, right, that deep research, that becomes commodity. I can get the same thing that you can get that you can get. That is going to be table stakes. And so if you were to break kind of what we said into two groups, kind of the data group or the content group, the content group's commodity, it's what you can do with the data and how you can reason with the data. I spent a number of years at AppLed, and I just lay in bed thinking about all the planning models that we create, all the scenarios and how dynamic things can become. I mean, that's way more interesting, I think, than hey, write a paper on this or give me the information on that. And so I do think what we're excited about today is not what we're going to be excited about tomorrow. And so even if you feel like you're ahead, there's more to do.
Yeah, I mean, right before I see myself look around, I get afraid because I think everything keeps changing under our feet as we're walking down the road. So, RAG was all the thing, and now it's old news. And, process design was all the thing, and now fixed models are out, and it's dynamic models. So I think we just have to be like, in sports, when you're like, I don't know where they're going to serve it, but I'm ready to move. I can't even predict. And so I think we just have to keep voraciously learning. And I would say when I talk to CMOs, I think the three biggest categories of issues are people, process, and systems. It's a new, innovative AI model. But we're really seeing problems with people because people are afraid. They're busy, they're working hard. We're on our third set of financial beatdowns from the macroeconomics. So there's fewer people doing more work under more pressure with unrealistic investors, and they're trying to learn new skills and retool themselves, and it's stressful, and it's tiring, and they're burnt out, and they're frustrated, and they're resentful. And so, as leaders, we really have to think about how do we invest in giving someone on the team space to really disrupt ourselves, and how do we really bake in learning into the culture. So when I was growing up in enterprise sales, we had a lunch and learn club once a month, and then every other week we had a best practices Friday. I think we just have to make AI part of the way we're running teams. And then on the processes, I think a lot of people aren't used to breaking down their work into discrete pieces that they can map out and replicate. So I think it's about teaching people a new way of thinking and approaching. And then, we've talked a lot about systems, but I think the systems are going to keep changing. We just kind of got to talk to more vendors, watch more demos, try things out, talk to each other about what's working.
I really like that point. I was going to talk about this new technology called HI. Have you heard of this? Human intelligence. I think it's going to be all the rage. And what I mean by that is the classic statement, and I know it's like been overused, but we're all going to be better for it using it as an assistant, and we all have 10 different assistants at our fingertips, right? I have a marketing assistant, I have a sales assistant, I have a finance assistant, I have an HR assistant. They're all there helping me be a better leader or what have you. I do think that there are two themes in my head. One is proprietary data, right? Because nobody has proprietary data. That's the whole point. It's your data. And how can you leverage that as a moat, as an advantage 5 years out? And I'm curious if you've seen any use cases or companies build proprietary data. We'll come back to that. The second one is documentation. I feel like the ones who are going to document better are going to have a better chance in terms of, this is the same point about data, right? Like they're going to have better chance in automating everything, right? Because if it's like documented, then you can now apply an agent to take that documentation and do something with it, as opposed to just, hey, I don't know, like it's in your head. And I'm curious if you have any reactions to either of those points.
So my absolute favorite data company using proprietary data is Carta. I don't know if any of you guys follow Carta, but there's this very bright statistician, Peter Walker, who pitched a job for himself because he was so interested in their data. He was like, oh, they have a treasure trove of data. I want to go in and analyze it. And be a thought leader with their data. And he's gone in and he does these weekly insights about what's going on in the venture capital and startup market based on real data from real companies and people's grants of their equity. And then not only that, but they built that back into the product so that you can benchmark yourself and even benchmark the success of your VC portfolio relative to others. So they're doing some really innovative things with their own data, and it's created this massive marketing engine because it's real value that's delivered over and over. So I really suggest that you follow him, A, to learn about startups and investing, but B, to see this model. Because I would absolutely pay for an agent GPT, I don't know what it would be, that was querying their data on my specific questions all the time because it's so rich and so actionable.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. As a CMO, you're not going to know every way that every person on your team can use AI. That is not the priority, but sitting with the leadership team, working with the board to understand where you're going to have proprietary data, how you're going to use that data, where it is going to be an advantage of you, how that's going to make you different than your peers is a really important conversation. And I think if you're not in the C-suite yet, it is a way to differentiate in your company. If you can bring ideas, if you can create conversation there. And I'm seeing the CMOs that I'm excited by, they are having those conversations. They understand the value of their company in the form of data, even if they haven't figured out yet how they're going to monetize that or how they're going to use that. And so I think for everybody here, thinking about the company not just as what you're seeing on the balance sheet, but thinking about what does this company really hold from a data perspective. And that's where, it's easy to say AI can disrupt all these big players, but these big players have data, and that's going to serve them. And so I don't know, this is, again, dating myself, but I use it to challenge myself, that dating. The first wave of what came out of the internet and digital, it kind of crashed. That's why we had that recession in 2008, 2009, and a new wave came after that said, we don't care if you're the big guys, you messed it up. And so we have that risk of even disrupting what we're doing. Just because you're first to it doesn't mean that you're going to be the final to it. And these big companies have this data, and if you don't come with something better, they'll figure out how to use AI, and they're going to do fine.
And I'll add one other thing. So I live up in Tahoe, but I've been in San Francisco at I think this is my 4th or 5th AI event this week. CMOs have a lot of AI events right now, or marketers. And I've had a whole bunch of conversations about how on-prem is the newest thing, because people need to protect their data by having an on-prem solution. Okay, on-prem we in the old days, you used to have things in your data center, and then we all moved to the cloud, and we moved to joint tenant, which created this cost savings, but is, insecure in some ways. So a lot of companies, in fact, I was just talking to Vec at Path Factory. Path Factory's had a lot of momentum in the government and security space because they do instances that are on a person's own property, not connected to the internet, so that they can use their private data and be absolutely sure that it's safe, but they can get all the insights from it. So I think I shared the story about Carta, who's sharing their data openly as part of their marketing, but I think this other, we're also in this massive transition between build versus buy. So 2 years ago, marketers were experimenting with AI, and then 2025 was the year of AI in production. But what I'm seeing and hearing is that the things people have rolled out and gotten great value from, they're already ripping out. Because some of them think, we bought this, I'm not going to name any vendors because I respect all of them, but we bought this, we got these great results, but now ChatGPT has come so far, and we've got this data guy, so we think we can build it ourselves in-house, and we think we can kind of feed it our own data, and we can customize it. So there's this massive build versus buy thrash. And so I think, I'm not expecting to see net dollar retention the same for AI companies, because I think we're still really in the experimentation phase, at least for the scale companies that I work with.
All right, so these are all fascinating points. I'm going to bring it home with a platform question. So I was having this discussion with another AI founder, and because everything is changing, right? Do you build for a Salesforce or a HubSpot? Do you build for the new age Attio or Clarify or Day One? Who do you build for as you are an AI company, right? Because you can define your ICPs like, I'm going to go after the enterprises. That means I'm going to go after the Salesforce or the HubSpots and the HubSpot premiums, right? But then, are you going to actually be able to get the deployment done, right? Or you go after other startups who are on these new age sort of CRM platforms or CDP platforms. So I'm curious, what would your advice be if you're a early stage AI startup? Which end of the market do you go after? Any thoughts, any considerations?
Oh, sorry.
If you look at the companies you're using now, somebody who said Salesforce and HubSpot, but the biggest brands in the world are using Oracle and IBM, right? And they're not throwing that out the window tomorrow. And so if I was tomorrow a founder, and I get to work with founders every day, there has to be something unique and proprietary, regardless of whether it's on your own platform or where you're plugging it in. And we're seeing so much happen with workflow tools that are handling all of that for you. I think it is, are you solving a problem more than if you're one or the other? We saw in that group, Carilu's amazing AI group, we saw somebody that built something inside of Salesforce that they could easily host it outside of Salesforce. Salesforce and HubSpot, they're smart enough to know that, hey, we have to be able to bring the best of things into our platforms. I think it's less relevant than ever. And I'm somebody who worked for a company that was fully built on a Salesforce platform. And I don't think they would have needed to do that if they were building today.
I feel really bad for AI founders. One of the companies I worked at was BEA, which was a middleware company, so I've thought a lot about integrations a lot of my career. And I think we've got the LLM problem. So I advised an AI founder who has standardized on Anthropic Claude, and he had a big deal with a financial services bank, Fortune 100 bank, that he was very well qualified and positioned for, but the bank had taken an entire year to get ChatGPT approved by its legal and governance. And they told him they were unwilling to start again on Claude and Anthropic. They were just gonna only standardize on ChatGPT. So the whole first to market there, I think is tough on the LLM side. And then I do think, so the specific example she was talking about was someone had built a sales coaching dynamic response where you could click a button in your Salesforce when you were engaging with an opportunity to say, like, grade me on how well I did engaging with this customer, grade me on how well my account plan is. So everything is happening outside. It's like a ChatGPT plus a copy AI automation, but then it's surfaced where his clients live. So I think, again, the challenge of being a startup is trying to get really focused on the ICP that you're going to use. And then hopefully you architect your product with enough flexibility that you can potentially change down the road. But, we know how hard that is if you're an AWS shop and you need to sell to Microsoft and you have to move to Azure. You're like, so it's a hard time because there's a million platforms and I don't see consolidation happening for the next 2 years.
Yeah, great point. We work with data, so we have to integrate with Redshift, BigQuery, Snowflake, Databricks, and then sometimes I think Domo came on. Like, whoa. All right, great way to end it. I want to maybe ask you all how you engage with startups, like specifically, if you do. And you do a quick pitch of how people can find you. Do you write online? Are you on LinkedIn? Like, give everybody the spiel.
Go ahead.
Okay. I work with companies, but I generally work with companies $50 million and above because I work with a CEO and a CMO or a vice president of marketing, and I help with some of the strategy and some of the marketing. But I do write a blog at carilu.com, and it's called Hypergrowth Leadership, and I've published, I think I just hit 75 blogs. I'm going to hit 100 this year. 75 blogs with like real hands-on templates of how to marketing leadership, things that you need to do across all of the different departments. So thank you.
I love her content, and you don't have to be, I help companies that are Series A, and I send them your blogs all the time. I work for Scale Venture Partners, and so if ever I can make an introduction to one of the investors for you, I'm happy to. We have, I think right now, very different sized companies, but 5 roles open for heads of marketing. And often I can go to my network, but I'm happy to meet new people and refer them in. What I don't have in my network, but our portfolio companies are always looking for, are people that are excited about AI, that are doing cool things with AI, that are not yet the marketing leaders. And so if you're doing something in operations or in content that's cool and want to be connected with one of the brands in the portfolio, they're all AI companies, and I would love to connect you. So, and you can find me on LinkedIn or anything tied to Scale.
We're going to open up for questions. All right, any questions from the crowd?
As a marketing professional,
go ahead. You're going to shout it out.
I'm more like a kid in the candy store today. Too many technologies, stuff like that. Earlier, it was very easy for me to kind of go walk up to the CEO or the CTO and say, hey, this was 18% or 20% of my marketing budget, and you give me the stack. But it's changed drastically right now. In fact, Insight Partners was talking about, especially the startups, around 13% growth in their tech stack spend. That's huge. So that's around 33%. So, and you see all the startups and you see the benchmarks. So what is your advice for us if we were to kind of benchmark the spend for technology? So that's the first question. And the second is going to be, how do we actually even negotiate with the board when it comes to, because everybody's saying that, oh, the investments are going up, but then when is the cut going to come? Because we never definitely need to kind of cut somewhere. So these are two things that I'm paranoid about pretty much every day when I wake up.
Super cool view of about 450 companies at all different stages, and the people doing the coolest things with AI, the most impactful, are CEOs, not marketers. And it's because they really understand the problem. And with that, then the board is happy, but everybody's happy to invest because it is to the problem or to the challenge. So it's not AI for AI's sake. And I think the second part of that is like you have to remember the job to be done, and is it going to help you do that job better? So ultimately, as a marketer, and this would apply to anything AI, our job is to get to the right person that we can solve a problem for, right person, right place, right time. That is our job, and so it has to be to that outcome, and then everything will make sense. Like you can't get caught up in the FOMO and the hottest technology. It has to be to the outcome you're trying to drive.
Yeah, I think the same. So what I'm seeing in the benchmark data is that tool spend is coming out of incremental headcount. So I'm not seeing people, on the whole, there are some layoffs. I mean, we're in a tough economic time. So in the middle, in the average, I'm seeing not hiring new people. So let's talk specifically for SDRs. I'm not seeing that there are some companies who have cut SDRs. So a lot of them say, hey, we have 10 and we're going to double their quota or triple their quota. I talked to the CMO of Snowflake, Denise Pearson, and they have like 350 SDRs. And she's like, we're not changing the org. We're like putting in tools and we expect them to be twice or 3 times or 4 times more productive. And so I think it's very ROI based. Like, can they book twice as many meetings with the same headcount? And so we're seeing that. So the things that have always been so hard for marketers to prove the ROI, I think that's why CMOs are looking at the highest ROI example implementations first. So SDRs are so close to sales, that's awesome. Getting blog writers to make more content is like squishier, so those are harder investments for the CFO.
More questions?
Hi, my name is Ashmi, and I've been at big companies like Microsoft, Carilu, for after you investing time. Large companies, people and process are always not easy to change. As you said, upskilling, bringing new people, changing processes that are cross-functional. For marketers, it's always just takes time in general, but now we need to move fast. So how are you guys advising larger companies, as you said, closer to happy to be able to do that? So when I was young, I took on this job once that was special projects. And then someone told me that is a dead-end career because, the CEO will be like, this is very important. We have assigned $10,000 and 1 intern to work on it. But I actually think that the best way to accelerate a team is to get a dedicated person who lives and breathes and obsesses on it and has a special evangelist charisma. Did any of you guys read The Tipping Point or The Tipping Point Revisited? I think there's these people on the team that can get, like, even the crankiest cynics possibly involved. So I'm seeing a lot of companies bring in consultants to do workshops with each team and try to extract from them processes that could be automated. I'm seeing them bring in some consulting companies. This morning we were at this company called GrowthX, which is this AI consulting company that's gone from 1 million to 7 million in like 6 months. And they're doing a lot of really innovative building for companies that then bring those things into their own teams to run. And then I'm seeing a lot of companies take someone out of some maybe data science role to really build out some of the tools and adapt them to the ways of working. Because I think it's really hard to have everyone do it nights and weekends in their free time. I just don't think that that's an accelerated path to success for big companies. So I think changing the culture, having like real OKRs. So one of my clients, I suggested, that like every week someone brings a different example to their team meeting and shares it, and then if she keeps asking about that, then people know, what gets watched gets done.
The other thing, Laura, I don't know, at Microsoft, I don't have the Oracle experience. I've actually found a job for my title was marketing special projects. We have overlapped too much.
It was a great job and it was fantastic. If you do it well, it works. That's how I got into tech. That's amazing. Microsoft, if we look at the largest companies, even healthcare, whatever the industry, they're not taking the risk. If you look at how they make up their companies, they're very happy, at least on the marketing and some sales too, with partners and agencies. And that is to de-risk, but while still taking advantage. I have the person that made all kinds of change when digital transformation is happening, is now being highly recruited into agencies. She is going to move over to agencies. She has not even dated large companies. She's going to be working, I think, with Dropbox or Wiz, because Wiz, they're so forward, but because they need people external to the organization to make change. So if that's where you want to make change, you're not going to do it, I think, in the brand. It's going to be adjacent to the brand. They're going to see it work, and then they'll bring it in, but it's not going to be today. I think we've also seen it with the Shopify CEO's email. It really has to come from the top if the company's going to prioritize it. We've all been that person who's evangelizing in a company that's not going to move. And sometimes you have to think, I gotta go. I gotta go meet with some innovators where we're going to push things forward.
I was just gonna say that if it's not coming from the top, it's not happening. Because it's not our priorities. All right, other question? Yep.
Yeah, thanks. My name's Levi. I work for an open source software company that's in the enterprise. And so I kind of want to challenge actually what you just said, because in my experience, while it is important that the top, is it closer? Okay, my bad. That the top is setting that priority of AI adoption and all of that. In my experience, the bottom has been the one actually driving the innovation. So how do you reconcile maybe alienating the bottom and their freedom to innovate and move by saying that the top has to kind of
course of my career, I've seen a massive
indirect that? How do you have both maybe?
Enterprise sales rep. I sold internet infrastructure to Yahoo and Intuit and advanced micro devices. And you had to go in at the top and get a sale, or even at Oracle, you had to get in and get a sale or SAP, and then it would take 3 years for them to implement. Everyone would be forced to use enterprise software. But then it's at Atlassian, where it's bottoms up. Developers test, the developers experiment, they're like the tastemakers of technology. And now when you go to sell to an enterprise leader, they refer down to their developers. So I think you're absolutely right that there's this permeation of executives have the budget, they get to make decisions, they kind of set the culture and direction, but ultimately they're looking for people who really know what's going on. I would say as a sitting CMO, I usually have someone in my data team or in the IT team, or like even the ninja owls who I really trust who see what's actually happening, and then everyone else is like doing a presentation that's someone else's presentation because, so I think you're right. I think the people who are in this room, the people who are like really hands-on are the ones who understand it, but I do think that the executives have to make space for those voices to be heard. They have to say, like, we really want to be an innovative company, we want to move faster, we want to disrupt, and I would say where you see what executives have to do is in removing barriers to innovation and speed. Because speed is the biggest issue for enterprises. Again, I told you, it took an entire year just to get the government's approval to start the first experiment with ChatGPT. So like an entire year after everyone else was already innovating. And I see that all the time with legal contracts, and if the CEO or the C-suite or even the vice presidents are bought into the technical teams really innovating and giving them experimentation leeway, the company can move faster.
A little bit of excitement to all of that. I'm assuming a lot of the room is not just using AI, but is marketing AI, is taking something that is AI and bringing it out to market. It is an exciting time to market to the enterprise because I think all the rules are breaking. We are seeing brands that do not have the 47 pages by industry, like all of the heavy content nonsense. It is like the stuff that I would be like at 2 o'clock in the morning, falling asleep, reading the CMO to send over to Accenture because they're going to send it to ABB or whatever nonsense they're doing. The flip side is it's a high bar. You need to be precise, you need to be clear about what the value is. You have to be just so specific. It is, I mean, example I use is we all know when digital, when we were using our iPhones, we could go to a site and say, is this company relevant? Because the page wouldn't load right, it wouldn't be a mess. People can look at companies and say, is this the AI company? Do I want to spend time here? And so it's a fun time to market AI, but your marketing has to be tighter and better than ever because there are so many companies that are trying to do the exact same thing that you are.
Yeah, and I think it just has to be really technical. That's why product-led growth still remains. Even if you're an enterprise sales company, people are doing 70 or 80% of their research before they even come to talk to your demo and you get to talk to them. Like, we really have to have fantastic demos on our site. We have to have like really deep technical support for the people who are going to use it. I think all jobs are becoming way more technical. Marketing is going to be a technical discipline for a lot more people than it's ever been. Using MMM.
All right, one last question. Maybe two last questions.
Thank you very much. I'm William. We had a session earlier and we talked about the future of marketing and what marketers would do. And it seemed like most of the work would be strategic. But then I understand that to get to that state, it comes from spending time in the trenches, right? Coming from an associate marketer, mid-level, before you become like an executive. If in the future everyone, or at least marketing requires executives, what's the path to that then? Because so far, it seems like the path to becoming an executive is almost like disappearing, right? It's hard to get opportunities as a junior. And I say this also as a manager and a founder, how to from an associate to them eventually becoming strategic. Right? Looking at the future 5 years from now, what do you feel like skill-wise that would look like? I don't know if you got my question.
If you have no idea what I'm talking about, then just leave like very than me. It's irrelevant now. But today, if you think of it as demand gen, brand, and product marketing. And I think that is a flawed way to look at it. It's going to be more flawed than ever because that same content use case we talk about in the SDR side, if you're doing deep research, is the exact same thing you're doing on the SEO side to create great content. And so the roles we're not going to break it up the same way. But that is my bet. I will share after, my name is Pergolino, I'm the only one in the world, I'll share on my LinkedIn right after this, a framework that I use at scale. And I took all of the marketing roles and I reorganized them in 3 categories. We keep saying 3. We've done the same like speaker training. The first one is strategic, the second is operational, and the third is tactical. And I can tell you that I would not want to specialize in the tactical, right? I would want to know the strategic pieces, which is then orchestrating all of those others. And when you think about marketing that way, I think you start seeing what the roles could be and how it could organize itself. And what I know less is how you move from that. I don't know how somebody coming in today that it doesn't get the experience in the tactical side, then moves up to the operational, then moves up to the strategic. I think we're all going to learn that together. I love the analogy of the road changing as we're stepping on it. But I do know if you can put your time, not just in learning AI, but thinking about those strategic pieces, and it doesn't just mean leadership, it means what is driving your buyers to buy, what is creating value from your companies, you will be better positioned for success.
I wish we could do a whole session on this. In fact, maybe I'm going to make one. But I actually think it's a great time to become an executive. And I think it's even more democratized than it's ever been. And I'm going to share 2 examples from my life. So I think the 2 things you have to do is run into the biggest disasters in the business that no one wants to work on. And I've had 3 moments in my career that were absolutely transformational. And the first, I was a public relations manager, at a very technical company. Now, if anyone's worked in a very technical company, public relations managers are the lowest on the pecking order because they're like the ditzy writers. They don't know how to code. And I have this rule that I have to be as smart or smarter than every engineer in the company, and I spend all my time with them. And a product management, not even product marketer, left the company a month and a half before the biggest product launch of the entire year. And I volunteered to be the product manager. And I did my PR job, which was related to like writing the launch and having customer stories. And then I would sit with the release engineer. Back then we put things on disks and mailed them to people for the beta. And I ran the smoke test, and I was very deep in the product. And it gave me this respect at the company that gave me the opportunity to take on any tough project that I asked for and make friends and have respect. And my entire mini thing right this moment is about having led marketing at Atlassian. And the reason I had that job was because of that PR thing, because the guy that was like the best friend of that guy was the president of Atlassian who recruited me to work there. And there's 2 or 3 stories like that where, actually that same guy, president of Atlassian, I was complaining 4 years later in another company about something on his team, how his team wasn't doing a good job, and he goes, well then why don't you fix it? And he hired me to manage the 2 most dysfunctional people I've ever worked with, a pathological liar and a raging alcoholic who sexually harassed people across the company. And I was their manager. And we had the fastest growing product in this like hot company. And so I did all 3 of our jobs for us while I tried to fire them. And so again, like sometimes I'll be like, shit, I want that. But like having been in the trenches and done the hard work, and so I'd say, well, 1, run into the burning fire and volunteer to do work. 2, try to get into projects around the company. Like understanding product and product release made me a better marketer. When I decided I wanted to be a CMO at like 25, I thought I had to do a tour of duty in every function. So I've done 7 years in product marketing, I've done 7 years in demand gen, I've done 7 years in brand. I ran advertising for Oracle and did like, super top of the funnel stuff. So I think that helps. Run into fires, get experience in all over the business, and then lastly, I somewhat regret that I didn't get an MBA. And I think this is controversial because I don't even hire MBAs usually. I feel like they're too philosophical. They don't want to do strategy. I'm like, no, we just do work. But I wanted to be a marketer. I wanted to be a CMO. I wanted to be this advertiser. And then when I got to the top, I realized that we pull these levers, but actually what we're doing is trying to make investors money. And they have all the power, and they make all the decisions because they're thinking about a financial trade-off of things. So they could care less about marketing. They're just trying to figure out, like, did we put $1 million in or $10 million and we get $20 million out of 2 years? And so I think if I'd done like one of those nighttime MBAs and really understood how all the business worked together, I would have been more successful earlier as an executive. So I was really like ground trained, but I think putting all those pieces together, and I think that's more accessible than ever because knowledge is at our fingertips constantly to learn anything we want at any hour of the day.
I'm going to leave with one note, which is the thing that I say this to everyone. You either have to be really good at research, or art, or science. If you're spiking in one of those 3, I think you get to the top. Because you're still the one who's sitting in that ChatGPT prompt asking the questions. So you gotta know which questions to ask to become an expert in your domain. It's not going to start speaking back to you. Art, everyone talks about how easy it is to do art. It is not, my friend. There are less than 1% of the people in this room are true artists. And that's not going to go away. And then science, right? True science, experimentation, understanding experimentation, truly is not easy. So those are the 3 things that I think of. One last question. I know this was a popular one. Can you take another question or we're going to go? You're going to go off? All right. I'm sorry, but thank you to these amazing people for spending a little time with us. Thank you.